someone who has graduated from, let's say, my college, as opposed to someone who has graduated from, let's say, some non-national, from national law school, let's say some one of the top three national law schools. So that person, like for example, when I was in college, I had no access to any alumni network. I didn't have any clue as to whether I have any seniors working in law firms. Though now I realize that almost in all tier one law firms, I have my seniors working, but my college never has that had that kind of alumni base. So there is sort of a distinction when it comes to opportunities. If I talk about national law schools and non-national schools, I'll be discussing in detail as we move forward. But it's not as if non-national law schools there's any bias or any favoritism towards national law schools. I just want to clarify it upfront, because a lot of times a lot of non-national law school students are disheartened by the fact that, look, we don't get internship opportunities. It's as if the HR rejects our internship application prima facie as soon as they read the name of the college. So it's not that. I'll be talking in detail about that. So let's begin with the topic in hand, which is basically that what are the basic skill sets required from a corporate lawyer. Before going into detail, I would try to take a step back, because I am sure that a lot of the young students, especially students who are in their first year or in their second year, have this basic question in mind, that even before they can decide, like basically even deciding as to whether they want to do corporate or whether they want to do litigation, this task itself is very daunting to them, especially if they don't have any godfather, they don't have any mentor, even that. And since there are plethora of opportunities present in this legal field, the very task of choosing one career alternative this task may seem unsurmountable. That's what I used to think when I was in my initial year, and it used to be very difficult. So from that perspective, first I'll just briefly discuss that what are the factors one should consider in determining whether one should opt for a corporate law practice, or if one wants to do independent practice. And it's mind you, I'll be repeating it, that it's purely a personal choice. Why I'm saying this is that you are the best judge of yourself. So number one factor would be that whether you want to have a fixed source of income as soon as you graduate. See, these are very practical points, because some people might say that a fixed source of income would be the worst thing which you should consider whether while deciding a career alternative. But there are a lot of people who have taken student loans, correct? And as soon as they graduate, a year after that, they have to start paying it. So to be very practical, whether you want to start earning upfront as soon as you graduate is one of the factors, because you all must be aware of this fact that if you want to pursue litigation as soon as you graduate, you may not start earning that much, correct? So this is one of the factors which you shouldn't be guided solely by this factor, but this is one of the factors which you should consider in mind. Because let's say if you join a law firm, or let's say if you join out as an in-house counsel, you will at least have a steady source of income as soon as you graduate, and this is provided you get a job. I'll be coming on to that later, how to apply and what are the basic skill sets required. I'll be coming on to that later. The second factor which you have to consider in deciding whether you want to do corporate litigation, see, I'm not focusing upon interest or your likes and dislikes per se. That should be the first criteria which you should keep into mind. But a lot of people are very confused. They just cannot take this call. They feel that they are good with, or they can manage litigation also, corporate also. So from that point of view, I am putting forth these points. The first point would be whether you want a steady source of income. The second point would be that whether you are ready to be open-minded, and whether you are ready to shed off all your shyness, or whether you are okay with running to and fro. Because why I'm saying that is that when it comes to litigation practice, I'm sure if you have seniors around, if you talk to them, you might be aware that the kind of working, whether you are working as a litigator in independent or with in chamber of any senior, or in a law firm, the litigation practice as opposed to someone working in a corporate practice, that's very different. Corporate lawyers don't go to courts, correct? But there are people who sort of like this. They're thrilled by the fact that they get to visit courts, see the greatest legal minds arguing in court, learn from them, right? So these are small factors which you need to consider, but I'm again reiterating this fact that the prime concern should be where you see yourself 10 years down the lane, 5 years down the lane, and what you exactly want to do in life. What are your likes and dislikes and interests? So that is should be the key concern. That is one thing. Now, coming to the second aspect, that what are the basic skill sets required for a corporate lawyer? Now, even before discussing about how to crack interviews, how to get internships, etc., the prime factor for any in-house or any law firm in deciding whether or not a candidate is fit to work with them is the knowledge base. Okay, because there are a lot of people or young students who have this thing in mind that look, I'm very shy, I'm very introvert, I am good with law, I know my stuff, but I cannot express myself. So I'm not fit for this law firm culture, and I cannot just interact with people, and I cannot express myself. Hence, I'm more suited towards judiciary or anything else, or an in-house counsel, but not uh, corporate lawyer. So you'll have to understand that being an introvert or not being an introvert has got nothing to do with excelling in the corporate field. Yes, to an extent, if you're expressive enough, if you have good communication skills, it does help you. But only and only, like, it's not as if only and only if you're extrovert, very expressive, only then you can excel. These are very, like, these are, if I'm given three parameters to judge a candidate, and one of these parameters is whether that candidate is expressive or not, or introvert and extrovert, and if I'm asked to mark them basis that, this factor would be the third one. Okay, the first and the key factor which law firms take into account is the knowledge. Now, I am strictly limiting my discussion to corporate law. Now, you please appreciate this fact that legal field is very dynamic. Lot has changed. Legal industry is not what it was 20 years back. Okay, it's not as if a lawyer is just someone who's a robe-clad barrister who would argue in court. It's not that. A lawyer can be anyone. A lawyer can basically a corporate lawyer or someone who's working as an in-house counsel. If you compare his role to someone who's working as a consultant, it would be different. A lawyer is not just a legal counsel for his client. He's even a negotiator for his client, and he's a deal maker for his client. For that like from that perspective, a lawyer is not just now expected to know law. He is expected to have that business acumen. But keeping all this apart, I'm not saying that from a fresher it would be expected that you have that much of business acumen, etc. Just sticking to the knowledge aspect. So see, every law firm has a minimum threshold of knowledge for every candidate to judge him. Whether they want to accept or not, that specific parameter or threshold would be used to evaluate that candidate. Now, I won't be talking in air. I would now go into technicalities and specifically mention that, for example, if let's say you're appearing for an interview in a law firm, be it tier 2 firm, tier 1 law firm, and it's specifically for a corporate team. Okay, so there are some basic questions which you can expect, or if not expect, at least you should be hands-on with those questions. Like, for example, if you're appearing for a corporate interview as a fresher, and if you're not able to explain the difference between indemnity, guarantee, bailment, pledge, hypothecation, what is the difference between a private company and a public company, or minimum number of members of a public company, private company, what are the recent changes brought about by the amendment of acts to the Companies Act. So these are very basic questions. This is the least which can be expected from a fresher, because I would like to make it very clear that irrespective of whatever you learn in law school, the actual work which is done by a corporate lawyer, or for that matter for any lawyer, not just corporate lawyer, the actual work which is being done when it comes to drafting, research, or anything, it's very different from what you have learnt in law school. So practical application is very different. But since you're a fresher, you have just graduated, or you have just appeared for your interview in your fourth or fifth year, if you're lucky enough in your fourth year, or if not fourth year, in your fifth year in the final semester, or even after you graduate, then the recruiter will at least expect you to know basic stuff. Okay, like for example, if it's for a M&A team, merger acquisition related team, he will or she will basically I mean that the recruiter, the interviewer will expect you to know the basic sections pertaining to merger and acquisition in the Companies Act. Okay, if your team like, and it's very important that if you're appearing for an interview, please make sure that you are able to figure out, or if you're able to research about that concerned partner, about what type of work he does. Okay, like for example, if you are, for a matter of fact, knowing that that partner is also doing work pertaining to securities law, no partner or no recruiter would expect you to be a expert in securities law. They won't ask you technical stuff. But since you are a fresher, they'll at least expect you to know the basic regulations which is applicable on a listed entity. The basic regulations of SEBI, which uh, govern the trade of securities in on the stock exchange. Like, I'll just mention a few regulations. SEBI LODR, listing obligation and disclosure requirement, SEBI takeover regulations, substantial acquisition of shares and takeover regulations, insider trading regulations. So, like, I'm just reiterating again, if you are appearing for a corporate interview, make sure that you know basic stuff pertaining to the Companies Act, public company, private company, pledge, hypothecation, basic stuff pertaining to M&A, private placement, open offer when it comes to securities law. Okay, when it comes to Contract Act, even though most of you would have read Contract Act in your first year or in your third semester, fourth semester, or second semester, please make sure that basic stuff like meaning of a contract, agreement, consideration, all this you're hands-on with it. Difference between indemnity guarantee. I'm repeating it because even though this seems to be very easy, someone who's in first year, these things may be on their fingertips. But at the time, and again, I'm reiterating why there's a difference between national law schools and non-national schools. Me being from a non-national school, what I have experienced is that even when we are appearing for an interview, most of the time we are clueless what to expect from the recruiter. We don't know what type of questions may be posed to us, as opposed to a national law school student who beforehand has sort of given a mock for his interview. His seniors have already taken a mock for his interview. The preparation of day zero, basically day zero is the time when law firms turn up in the top 6, 7 national law schools for placement, and it's mostly in their fourth year. Okay, so by the time they are appearing for their day zero, even a month before that, they start preparing. Even months before that, the preparation for the day zero starts, as opposed to a non-national school where majority of the students are totally clueless. If at all any law firm or company turns up, a night before that they'll start preparing, and they'll call up their seniors and ask that what should I study. So this is not how you should approach your interview. And I'm not talking about preparing for an interview only when you reach fifth year. If you know that you're interested in corporate law, if you know that you have made up your mind to uh, take up corporate law, please ensure that in the beginning, as soon as you land up in law school, you ensure that you start reading upon subjects which are important for you. And I'm not saying that please ignore all the subjects, because at the end of the day, grades do matter. This is another important question which a lot of students are confused. Even I used to be confused that whether grades matter or not. Please remember that grades do matter. For a matter of fact, a tier 1 law firm or a tier 2 law firm, let's say any law firm, I'm not categorizing law firms right now. Law firms have that much liberty. And see, like, why I'm saying all this is that you'll have to understand that you may be the topper of your college, you may be the topper of your section, but please don't live in that bubble. Okay, that I'm very smart, I'm the topper of my batch. You'll have to realize that, look, you are the topper of two sections, amongst two sections comprising of 120 students. Correct. At present, there are 800 to 900 plus law schools in India. So your competition is not against your batch. Okay. My words may sound very harsh and rude, but I don't want to keep you in any bubble. Your competition is against those 120 students of 900, like you can do the maths, 900 into 120 on an average. Your competition is against those number of students. And please mind the fact that especially if you're from a non-national law school, you have to ensure that you are different. You cannot just manage to do what others are doing and expect to be placed in a very reputed law firm or with a reputed company. You'll have to stand out. Now, when it comes to standing out, the the task of standing out, it cannot happen overnight. It's not as if you are in your final semester and now you want to do something miraculous and something will happen. That could happen, could not happen. And I'm not saying that if you're in your final year and now you have decided to pursue corporate law, you cannot do anything. To be very honest, till the time I was in my fourth year, I had just done one corporate law firm internship. But it's nothing to mention. I wouldn't give my example that just because I did just one corporate internship, you should also take the similar path. Please don't do it. So if you have made up your mind, please ensure, the second point which I am coming to, that please ensure that your CV is similar to where you see yourself 5 years down the lane. Now, why I'm saying this is that I have seen a lot of students mentioning useless things on their CV. And why give example of someone else? I would be the perfect example, to be very honest. When I was, till the time I was in my third year, I'm being very honest, I used to be very shy, introvert. Okay. I never used to open up with anyone. I used to prefer keeping quiet and doing my own stuff. So I used to think that just getting a paper published or just presenting a paper in a seminar and just if I'm just doing something or the other, it will be very helpful, and at the end of the day I'll end up getting placed because just because my CV is good. But see, things don't work that way. Okay, so if you have decided to pursue corporate law, my humble advice would be that please ensure that you are building your CV that ways. And by making, like, as in, like, this is one of the questions which I'm sure someone would ask, that what all should I do to ensure that my CV is suited to a corporate law firm job? So number one, try to get decent grades. And I'm not saying that if you are not the topper of your batch, you won't end up anywhere. What I mean to say is that from your side, don't just leave up on studies. At least ensure that your grades are average, above average, or not. Like, I would recommend that ensure that your grades are excellent. Okay, because any day, if a recruiter has two CVs, both having similar type of experience in terms of internships and other stuff, and one of the students has a better grade, obviously, if I'm a recruiter, I would select the student which has better grades. Okay, because on our all other parameters, they both are equal. So from that perspective, please, at least from your side, be like be a bit laborious and ensure that your grades are good. Now coming to CV, like, you have done your part and your grades are good. Good. Now coming to the other part, moods. Now, especially like this thing is prevalent in national law schools as well as non-national law schools. There is a myth surrounding moods that if you don't moot, if you are not a winner of a moot, then you are doomed. And only people who do moots and people who are good in moots can excel and can do well in law firms. It's very silly to accept this fact, because, or even like, there are so many seniors I have seen that who used to do well in moods, who used to be very good speakers, but I don't see them working in law firms. So it's not, and there are so many students who never used to moot, even though I used to moot. But there are so many students from my college, from people who I met through internships, my colleagues who are working with me at camp. There are so many people who have not done even a single moot in their law school life and who ended up working in law firms. So please don't be misguided by your seniors, faculties, or whosoever who say, like, anyone who's forcing you to do a moot. Don't do it. If you don't like doing it, please don't do it. See, the purpose of any co-curricular activity is not just to mention it on your CV. I'll be very honest. Okay. The purpose of any co-curricular activity, this is sounding very theoretical, but this is a fact. The purpose of any co-curricular activity is to hone your skills. Okay, like for example, I used to be an introvert. I used to avoid unnecessarily speaking to people or my seniors. But when I used to moot, like I used to seek help from seniors, like because there is like no other way. Or I used to ask them to take mock. Okay, so and when you go for moots, you meet new people, you get to know that you basically you are able to see that where do I stand, because as I said, a lot of people have this thing in mind that just because I'm doing well in my college, I'm a rock star. Please don't be a fool. Don't you're fooling yourself by believing this. Okay. So when you meet new people, when you go to these competitions, you're able to judge yourself. Where do you stand? So when it comes to CV, please restrict mentioning mooting to an extent wherein you are able to justify the knowledge which you acquired through this moot. Basically, in simple words, if you have mentioned some international moot and it's a corporate law firm, and if they ask you what was that international problem about, and if you're not able to justify it, just because you have participated in that moot, that won't help you. Mentioning something on your CV and not being able to justify it would do you more damage than not mentioning that thing altogether. So yes, if you have done moots, well and good, but don't force yourself in doing moots. Okay. And now coming to the other aspect, research papers. What mistake I have done? See, whatever I am speaking you is not theoretical. Each and every word I am telling to you is based on my mistakes, as in what I like where I went wrong in my initial years. Okay, now coming to research papers. Like if you have made up your mind by the end of your third year or fourth year, or let's say like kids these days are very smart. They are able to decide uh, upfront, even in their second year onwards, that what do they exactly want to do. So if you have already made up your mind that you want to pursue corporate law, if you want to work in a corporate law firm with a corporate team, please ensure that if you're writing a research paper, it's on a corporate law issue. Don't write a research paper on a topic pertaining to gender justice or euthanasia. See, I do understand that if you're not getting any publications in corporate with respect to corporate topics, it's always better to write other research papers and get them published. But upfront, your uh, basic idea should be to get publications which are pertaining to your area of interest. Because at the end of the day, the recruiter, when he's going through glancing through your CV, he won't read through your CV word by word for 10 minutes or 20 minutes and then quiz you. He will, on an average, he will skim through your CV for 20 seconds if he is generous enough. And if you are writing irrelevant stuff, he'll just ignore it. As opposed to someone who, as sort of like, for example, if you are appearing for a corporate, like I'll be very honest with you. The first law firm interview which I gave was through my college only, and it was Link Legal. And I remember the concerned partner. I did a lot of research papers pertaining to random topics, like ranging from women in law, gender justice, euthanasia, UN clause, international law related topics also, and including corporate law topics also. And I remember I had written something on FDI policy, CSR, and merger acquisitions. So I remember he never asked me any question pertaining to UN clause or gender justice. His questions were limited to, or he was more interested in knowing my understanding of foreign investment laws or understanding of concept of CSR or mergers and acquisitions. So basically, such points which are pertaining to your area of interest and pertaining to the area of law which that law firm is practicing and for which you are appearing for an interview, that would be a talking point as opposed to some topic which is totally irrelevant. So if you don't have anything to write in your CV, then it's okay to mention, because at the end of the day, a decent publication does prove a point to the recruiter. It does say that this person has decent research abilities and he can analyze facts. Okay, and like the third point which I would want to point out is that a lot of students are in a rush to get publications. Okay, Just give me 10 seconds. I'm also skimming through the questions so that I'm able to answer them directly. Yeah. So I'll be answering those 2, 3 questions which I have seen. So coming on to my topic, that a lot of students have this thing in mind that we just have to mention publications and we'll mention anything and everything. Okay, and I've seen so many students mentioning paid publications on their CV. See, in your initial years, everyone does that. It's a mistake, but if once you join law school, you're in a hurry to fill up your CV. It's okay, you have done it. But as you grow, once you are third year, fourth year, fifth year, please ensure that you don't mention uh, paid up publications in your CV, because it's very easy to understand. Like, he's not a fool. The person who's interviewing you will have minimum 10 years of experience or 20 years of experience. You cannot just mention that you have got a publication with some international journal of interdisciplinary law and legal jurisprudence. There are so many such fake journals who just take 1500 and give you a publication with ISSN number. It's just useless. Don't run after it. I would prefer that try to get 2 publications, but decent ones, solid ones in national law schools journals or other law school journals. Now coming to the questions, someone has asked me that what if someone is in third year and has not done any corporate law firm internship? As I again said, till the time I was in my fourth year, I had done just one corporate law firm internship. Doesn't matter. It's not as if the recruiter will ask you that why weren't you doing corporate law firm internships in your first 3 years. Ideally, I would never suggest someone or recommend someone to do a law firm internship while in their second year. Why I'm saying it, that please please understand that when you're interning in a law firm, that person is not sitting here to teach you. It may sound very harsh, but every time you submit a work assignment, you are being judged. Okay, so better than, and he won't bother, that concerned person doesn't have the time or doesn't have the patience. Some people might be very cordial, but majority of the people won't care whether you are in your second year or third year, or whether you are in your fourth year. Okay, so if you submit some research and if it's not up to the mark, you will lose the chance of impressing your team. So better to intern in smaller places, in tier 3 law firms, if you want to really pursue corporate practice, or if you want to really work in corporate law firms, work in very small law firms in second year, or in your, let's say, fifth semester. Once you have gained decent expertise, you have some amount of expertise in corporate law from your internships, only then try to intern in tier 2 or tier 3 law firms. Now, another question which I am getting is that whether pursuing CS course along with law would be helpful. Definitely. And again, I'm mentioning, it's not as if just because you have done CS, some firm will take you. A firm will take you just because the recruiter thinks that your knowledge threshold would be better than other fresher who is just graduated, just because you have done a CS course. Okay, so if you have done a CS course and you have that certificate in your hand and still you are not up to the mark, the law firm won't take you. Okay, because the amount of money which they have to pay you, they have to justify it. Okay, every team has a target, and it's like a law firm and a in-house a company, they run totally, like, their working mechanism is totally different. In a law firm, there are set targets for each team. Okay, so from that perspective, but you can always, specifically since you mentioned about CS costs, especially in companies. When I mention in-house, I mean companies. Okay, so especially in corporate teams of companies, people who have done law plus CS, they are preferred over just lawyers. Okay, now someone has asked that whether your speaking skills are important, whether English speaking skills are important. Definitely, someone who has decent skills would be preferred over someone who's not that uh, well versed with English language. But that should never be a deterrent, because I have deterrents, because I have seen people who couldn't even fluently speak English, and who ended up being very decent corporate lawyers. So never let that thing come into your mind that look, I'm not fluent with English, and hence I'm not suited for a corporate law firm job. Please don't let that thing sink in your mind. Now coming to the other important aspect, that how to secure internship. Even though we are getting a bit digressed from the point, but I feel that like, even though our point of discussion is that what are the basic skill set required, even before we come to skill set, it's very important to understand how to actually get an internship. Now coming to that, for a national school student, sometimes it's very difficult to secure an internship. For that, I would suggest that please follow three methods which I would recommend. Number one, please try to get in touch with as many seniors who are working in law firms as possible. If that's not possible, number two, please get in touch with people on LinkedIn. Make your LinkedIn account. There is no embarrassment in seeking help. I have secured internships by sending messages to people on LinkedIn. There is no, please don't be shy. If you are introvert, please, it's okay, be that way. But when it comes to professional life, please shed off all your shyness and all your apprehensions. Contact senior people on LinkedIn. If you contact 100 people, I'm sure that there would be one person who may be in a position to help you out. Okay. Number three, and specifically this I'm talking about people who don't have any legal background, who are from non-national schools, who don't have any legal godfathers. Okay. Number three is that please apply for internships at least 6 months before you actually want to intern. Now, why I'm saying is that, again, there are so many people who want to intern in that specific month, during those holiday months of June, July, August, or January, February, December, that it is impossible for the HR to adjust everyone. So from that perspective, it's like first come first serve basis. And mind you, if there are 20 internship slots available, 10 of them might get filled by top national law students through their placement committees, through their internship committees. So from that perspective, apply beforehand. And by applying, I don't mean that just making list of 60 law firms or 10 law firms, sending a template email to them and just forgetting. Please don't do that. Don't send template emails. Your cover letter, which should be specific to that law firm and addressed to the HR of that law firm. Okay. And it should mention like the name of that concerned organization. Don't just mention, dear sir, ma'am, I'm a 4th-year student, I want to intern in your organization from this to this month. Would request you to, like, don't do that. Okay. Now coming to the other aspect, when you are applying, please remember that sending just one email to an HR of a tier 1 or let's say tier 2 and in fact tier 3 law firm is like not sending in any email, because again there is so much crowd there, like 10,000 students applying for like 20 internships positions, that it gets very difficult to give internships to everyone. So from that perspective, please keep following up. Once you have applied, obviously in first go you won't get any response, especially if it's a big law firm, you won't get any response, and you cannot blame the HR. She's doing a job, she has other administrative stuff to take care of. So you cannot expect her to sit and reply to each email of an intern which she is getting. She must be getting some 100 emails per day. Okay, you never know. So from that perspective, your job is to apply and keep following up. And I am telling you, if someone says that, see, I applied at 100 places, I kept following up, and still I didn't get an internship, I won't believe that person. It's a known fact that if you apply at 100 places, keep following up, keep calling, you will end up getting an internship. And if you're doing it 6 months well in advance, you will, for a matter of fact, intern in a decent law firm. Take it, as in take my words, mark my words. Like, this is the best formula for securing an internship. Now coming to the other questions which law students have when it comes to internship certificates or online courses, webinars. please remember that no law firm will hire you just because you have mentioned 10 webinar certificates, or let's say if you have mentioned 10 courses on your CV. Okay, a webinar or online certificate could be a top talking point for an interview. Okay, it's not as if just because, and forget about webinars, I'm talking about internship also. Let's say in your CV you have faked everything, you have written 10 internships, okay, in tier 1 law firms, and that concerned partner doesn't ask a certificate from you. Do you think you'll be able to fool him and he'll give you a job just because you have interned at 10 times in tier 1 law firms? No, that doesn't happen. No recruiter will hire you just because you have done 20 internships in law firms. He will hire you based on the skill set which you have acquired by virtue of interning in those law firms for such a long span of time. Please remember that. You will get recruited not because of the fact that you have interned so many times. You will get recruited from the fact that you have reached that level of confidence. You have acquired those skills, that threshold of knowledge you are meeting. Okay, so please remember that. Now there were a lot of questions which I got, and I'll be answering I request Khushbu to pitch in and even take into account the other questions which the students are mentioning in the chat box. But before that, I'm taking out on the questions one by one. Number one, lot of students have this thing in mind that whether doing an LLM would get them that edge in getting a corporate law firm job. Please don't do an LLM just because you think that it will fetch you a job, it will get you a tier 1 job. That doesn't happen. Law firms don't hire you just because you have done LLM. Even if you have done an LLM from an Oxford and Harvard, I may sound very rude, very harsh, but a law firm won't take you just because you have done an LLM from Queen's Mary or Harvard, Oxford. Okay, they won't take you just because basis a degree. So if you think that I want to come back to India, I want to take a loan, go for an LLM, and then come back and repay my loan because I would get a tier 1 law firm job because now I've spent so much amount of money and got my LLM from a Ivy League college. That may not happen. That may happen, may not happen. What my point of view is that it doesn't guarantee you a job. So LLM, if you're doing, that would be to hone your skills. It would be for acquiring a specialization. Don't do an LLM by just because you think that you will be able to pay off your, don't take up a loan for an LLM thinking that you will be able to pay it off in 2 years and there's a guarantee that you will get a very high paying job. You may get it, you may not get it. So if you want to do LLM, do it from the perspective of acquiring knowledge as opposed to doing an LLM just for landing up in a law firm. That may happen or may not happen. So don't take decisions in any haste. And if you think that you'll have to take loan and it will be very difficult for you to repay it back in case you don't get a tier 1 job, then please give up your idea of doing an LLM. Okay. Now, second question would be that if introvert question I've already answered, so that I'll skip. What type of questions are asked in interviews? So that also sort of I've answered, but I'm just repeating it, that please be aware of the latest happenings in corporate field. Please be updated on LinkedIn. Just by being on LinkedIn and being active on LinkedIn, you will realize that you will be able to understand and appreciate whatever new updates RBI or SEBI or MCA comes up with. And I'm very sure that if you're in your second year, third year, you may not be able to grasp everything that easily because you have not even been taught Companies Act, correct? You haven't been taught any SEBI regulations. But if let's say it's a 2-pager circular, see from your perspective as a student, what you can do is that read through the circular. If you're not able to interpret that circular, just refer to that specific section, regulation, or any old circular which is mentioned in that specific circular, notification or amendment. just Google that section, or just go to MCA's website if it's a Companies Act related section, read up on that section, or regulation on SEBI's website. It will hardly take you 10 minutes. And you will realize that by doing all these small things from your initial years, or even if you start today, if you're in your third or fourth year or fifth year, you will definitely have an edge over your other batchmates. Okay. Now coming to the other question, someone asked that uh, how are opportunities, like when it comes to a tier 2 city, are there a lot of opportunities in tier 2 cities? So to be very honest, in tier 2 cities, hardly there, like you won't find offices of tier 1 law firms. There could be law firms of tier 2 law firm offices in tier 2 cities, and there could be offices, in corporate offices of companies in-house. There could be in-house teams sitting in tier 2 cities. But if you want to specifically practice corporate law, I would prefer that try to get a job in a metro city. And by metro city, I mean Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad. Any top city would be perfect for you, because you'll understand that most of the startups would be located in cities like Bangalore or Gurugram, and it's very convenient for them to seek legal advice from law firms who have offices in that city. So from that perspective, the amount of work which they will be doing would be better, as opposed to working in a company or in a tier 2 tier 3 law firm based in a smaller city. Okay. Now another skill set which I would expect from any corporate lawyer, which I missed since I started answering the questions, is that please, like there are a lot of students who even before interning or just based on their internship experience, they don't want to do corporate law firm jobs because they feel that it's very hectic. They don't have, like corporate lawyers don't have a social life. They just keep on working and working. They don't get their weekends. So I'm giving you a very practical example. If you do a sample survey of top lawyer of this country and pick 10 from 10 litigators, okay, people who are practicing litigation, take 10 people who are doing corporate law firm jobs from past 20 years, take 10 people from companies who are general counsels, who are the legal heads of the companies. And if you have a mixed sample of 50, 30, 30, 40 people, and if you ask them that sir or ma'am, how were your initial years? I'm telling you, exceptions could be everywhere, but 95% of them, and I can vouch for this fact that 95% of them would tell you that look, our initial years were difficult. We had to work hard. So there is no escape, like there is no, absolutely no escape when it comes to hard work in your initial years. Be it a corporate lawyer, be it, don't think that just because a corporate lawyer, as per your standards, has to work hard, you'll able to escape working hard in a company, or you'll be able to escape working hard in a litigation setup. Please take that call once you have started working. Work somewhere for 2 years, then decide. Don't take a premature decision and just decide that I don't want to do corporate law just because working hours are crazy. See, working hours can be crazy anywhere. I have been working for 4 years. I have, if someone that senior is willing to work that much hard, why should a fresher shy away from hard work? Give me one solid reason. And please understand that I'll just give a very simple theoretical example, which I read somewhere, Parkinson's law. So this Parkinson's law is not a mathematical law. Parkinson's law basically says, I'll be very slow in explaining this because it might sound a bit convoluted and complicated. Basically, it's not. Parkinson's law basically says that work expands so as to fill space left for its creation, for its completion. Sorry. So basically, I'm repeating that work expands so as to fill the time left for its completion. So what it basically means that if you have free time and if you have, like let's say you have you have a petition to draft, or basically you have to draft a 2-page notice, or for a law student you have to do a very simple research, which can ideally take you 1 hour, but you have the entire day with yourself. So if you're totally free, what you would do is that you would spend the entire day idling away and doing that work, as opposed to someone who has a lot of work and who's doing simultaneously 2, 3 work, one after the other. He's doing that work. So this is Parkinson's law. Why I mentioned this law is that, look, if you don't want to work hard in your initial years, what would happen is that you would become lazy, and there would be a downward spiral from that moment. You would see that people having seen experience, and in terms, when I talk about experience, I mean number of years they have spent in the profession. Within 2 years, you would be left far behind, and they would have gained much more experience as compared to you. Because even if you land up in a law firm or with a practitioner, just because if you land up somewhere doesn't mean that your job is like your life is set, and if you have to just spend there your entire life. Let's say you want to switch. So if you want to switch to some other organization, that organization may not take you just because you have worked with that specific individual, or just because you have worked in that specific law firm. You may have worked in Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas for 2 years, but if you are appearing for an interview in some other law firm, that law firm may not take you. If you are clueless about what to do, if you don't have the basic skill sets required from someone who has 2 years of worth of experience. Okay, so please take this into account. Now, I would request Khushbu to take up more questions, and let me know if I have to address any specific question. Of
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Sir, so we have some questions in the chat box, so we'll go forward with those first.
sure.
So, yeah, so there's one question. So, what are your views regarding the placement opportunity in the coming months during this pandemic?
See, to be very honest, lot of law firms have deferred intake of freshers, including very reputed law firms also. So, for a matter of fact, I'll be very honest with you, these are tough times. But considering that this pandemic it's not as if it will perpetually continue. Like it's the same for everyone. 2020 batch is badly affected by it. I won't lie. And there could be organizations which may not even accept freshers, but at the same time, there are many law firms who may remain unaffected by this pandemic, and they may intake young students, young freshers. So, your job at this point of time should be to research and get to know that what are the organizations which are offering internships and who are taking interns, as well as who are recruiting. So this is your prime job.
Yes.
Please go all out. Please check with your seniors, whoever you know. Check with your faculty members, people who you can approach on LinkedIn. That's the best way to go about it. This is
Okay,
what
sir.
my advice would
Uh,
be.
okay, sir. So, the next question we have is, are online internships worth?
Yes, yes, definitely. Even though I do understand that a physical internship would be much better as compared to a online internship, because that human touch would is always very important. As in, if you're able to face interact with someone, it's always very good. But someone who's taking a stand that अरे ये तो it's just a online internship, मुझे कुछ नहीं मिलेगा इससे. It's
Mm-hmm.
plain stupid, as opposed to
Yes.
someone who's thinking that, look, I have nothing else to do, at least I learn 10 things. You never know when your luck strikes, when you are noticed by right people. Okay, and it's not about just being lucky, it's about working hard and getting noticed.
Yes, sir.
So, as opposed to someone who's not doing anything, passing idling of his time, sitting at home, saying that, like, we all are stuck in pandemic, why are you pursuing an online internship? I think your idea should be to keep on working. As I again said, that if you that Parkinson's law, that if you idle away your time, it would be a downward spiral for you.
Yes, sir. So the next question is, what is the regular work that a corporate lawyer is supposed to do?
See, like, I'll be talking from the perspective of fresher, not from from
Mm-hmm.
someone who has worked for 4 years. So a fresher work would range from basic research, or which an intern also does during his internship, but your responsibility drastically changes. If an intern makes a mistake, or if an intern says that, if for example, I give some work to an intern and he says that I'm not able to find a case law, even if I'm able to find that case law, or even if that intern gives me that one case law, I may still have to check it. I may not rely on that intern because he's not accountable for his work. Okay, but for the matter of fact, if you once you start working, you are accountable for everything you do. Okay, so his range of work would range from basic uh, research, drafting opinions, drafting memorandum, uh, and doing due diligence. So basically,
Okay.
this is the basic work which would be expected from a fresher. And mind you, majority of the work no fresher knows, irrespective of whether he's from the best law school of India. I have seen people from the best law school of India, top three national school of India, having a very difficult time in law firms. They were topper of their batches, but I've seen people struggling, and by struggling I mean really struggling. So as opposed to someone who's from a non national school and who has interned so much that he has acquired those basic skill set which someone from a top national school hasn't. So it's purely based on, and like one thing I would want to make it very clear, that more than how intelligent are you, how much you can persevere, how much hard work you can put in, that matters more than anything else for a fresher. Number one, being available. Number two, showing that you are able to put those extra hours. If you have done your work till 10 p.m. in the night, but if you feel that if you read through it once again for an hour, you will be able to include or give your output in a better way. If you can include two more extra points, and if you take that extra step, then that would be appreciated, as opposed to someone who's very smart, who thinks that he or she knows everything, and he's from a very, some people have this thing in mind that I was the topper of my batch. I was the only student who was recruited by that law firm from my entire batch, so I know everything. So that attitude doesn't help. Please don't develop that attitude. Be very humble, be very polite, even if you're recruited, because mind you, if you're in a law firm, there would be someone at your level who's more intelligent and sharper than you. Okay, so even if you're recruited, your point of reference should be your immediate senior or someone who you can look up to, and try to match that standard, as opposed to comparing yourself with other juniors and acting cool and smart. Please don't do it. That won't take you anywhere.
Okay, sir. So the next question is, how does a person who's recently graduated do to acquire these skills?
So yeah, see, I'll be very honest with you. If you have just graduated, it's not, these things don't come overnight. And at the same time, it's not very difficult or impossible to acquire. First thing which you can start, I'm just answering in a very pinpointed way. If you have, assuming that you have graduated right now and you want to develop those basic skill sets, number one, Open Companies Act. I'm just telling you basic sections, as in the basic stuff which you should read. Difference between public company, private company, what is private placement, what is a prospectus, what is a draft red herring prospectus, from Contract Act, in Companies Act, what is merger acquisition. You should be thorough with the basic concepts. What is a MOA, what is a AOA, how is a company incorporated, basic stuff. I'm not talking about opening the Companies Act and memorizing it. This is the basic. When it comes about Contract Act, what is agreement, what is contract, what is consideration, what is indemnity, what is guarantee. This is basic stuff. Okay, basic threshold of minimum information which any law firm would expect. Number two, once you have read through it, please be abreast with the legal updates which are happening, because amidst this COVID crisis, a lot of times MCA has extended timelines, come up with circulars. SEBI has amended regulations, extended filing timelines. So try to be abreast with all this. Number three, be active on LinkedIn. If I'm sure that, like, majority of the youngsters or people who are in college would be spending hours and hours on Instagram. Like, they would be waking up and checking their Instagram stories. and checking their Facebook. Nothing bad in it. I'm not judging anyone. It's okay. It's totally normal. But if you're able to check your Instagram, why not check your LinkedIn also? Why not? Because you will understand. Because there are a lot of like there are many people who keep on posting legal updates. As a matter of fact, I also try. If I come across anything relevant from a corporate perspective or SEBI perspective, I just try to summarize it in let's say one paragraph, and I post it. It's only for students and for people who are in this profession. I am not gaining anything from posting all those updates. Correct. So there are
Yes.
so many people who are doing it, and it's mostly like LinkedIn basically is for exchange of such updates and information. So please make use of it. It's the best way. And I have, mind you, I have seen people who were from non-national law school and who ended up getting internships through LinkedIn, like including me. I have secured internship through LinkedIn also. Okay. So number one, read basic concepts of law when it comes to Companies Act, Contract Act, Securities Law. Number two, abreast with legal updates. And number three, be active on LinkedIn. And by active, I don't waste your time just by adding your peer group people and chatting with them. Don't make it another WhatsApp. That won't serve the purpose. It's not Messenger. It's not meant
Right.
for all that. Okay.
Yeah.
And number four would be that try to send uh, internship applications or job applications to as many people as you can, and keep on following up with them.
Right. Okay. So the next question that we have is LLM in corporate law will help in becoming a good corporate lawyer in the long run.
I'm just reiterating, in long run, yes. Obviously, when you pursue LLM, you would meet more than anything else, you would be exposed to different environment. And when it comes to LLM, I'm talking about LLM from abroad. I'm not talking about doing a 1 year LLM after cracking CLAT. I'm talking about LLM from abroad. You'll get a better perspective. You'll meet people from across jurisdictions who would be working in different law firms across the globe. So connection wise, more than anything else, you'll develop apart. Like I'm not just talking about friendships. I'm being like from a professional point of view. You will be meeting people who will be working in different law firms across the globe. So from a connection point of view, from a professional point of view, it will be very helpful. And number two, obviously, if it's a specialization course, obviously you will gain a lot of knowledge. But taking a loan, going for an LLM, thinking that as soon as I'm back, I'll get a fancy job and within 1 year I'll pay off the loan. Please don't do it only like from that thinking. Please like avoid taking that road.
Okay, so so we'll just go with one more question. What is the salary that could be expected for a fresher LLB pass student?
See, salary ranges from firm to firm. Like if it's a tier 3 firm, it will be different. Tier 2 firm, it will be different. Tier 1 firm, it will be totally different. Tier 1 firms, for a matter of fact, pay, like their pay scale is really good. It would be at par with the average, or in fact, it will be much better than an average salary of a IIT graduate. If you Google IIT average salary of a student from IIT Kanpur, an average a tier 1 law firm definitely pays more than that. So like I'm not supposed to reveal the numbers because I'm bound by confidentiality provisions of my retainership agreement, but please be assured that salary is something which you will be taken care of if you land up in a good law firm. But as a fresher, please don't be so self-obsessed that you reject an organization just basis the package which they are offering. Like for example, if some uh, law firm is offering you 40,000 per month, don't just reject that organization saying that arey yaar 40,000 kya, it's too less for me, how will I maintain, I have to pay rent, or I have such a lavish lifestyle, I won't be able to sustain myself in 40,000. Please understand that that won't be the last job which you will be uh, working on. As a matter of fact, I never started with Amarchand. I worked in a tier 2 firm for 3 months, Link Legal. And I'm sure majority of you must be knowing how much Link Legal offers. It's not a tier 1 law firm who's paying like excellent salary, but it is decent enough to sustain you. Okay, so please, as a fresher, more than anything else, you should be concerned about the knowledge which you will be acquiring. Because once you acquire the basic skill set, Within 2 years, it's very easy because I've seen so many people, so many colleagues who used to work with me in Link Legal, and though even I was fortunate enough, I switched within 3 months. Many of my colleagues who were in Link Legal, who worked for a year and a half, 1 year, 2 year, they could switch in tier one law firms within a year, 6 months. So don't base your decision of working in a particular law firm, number one, basis the salary which it's offering, unless it's too less, which makes it impossible for you to sustain. And number two, don't base your decision based on the number of hours which you will be required to put in. Please don't do that.
Right, sir. Okay, so sir, we'll wind up with the question and answer round. Sir, I would like to extend our gratitude on behalf of the team Law Sisto for sharing with us some information and thoughts. It was indeed a very informative session. So we look forward to organizing more informative sessions with you. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all the participants for joining in, and we hope that you made the best of the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.